Okay, so, October 29th, 1929. Black Tuesday. You've heard about it? Stock market crashes. Everyone loses their money. Great Depression starts. That's the story, right? Yeah, no, that's not what happened. Look, I spent weeks going down this rabbit hole and dude, what actually happened is way crazier than what they taught us in school. So get this, 3 years before the crash, these 4 central bankers had this secret meeting, and I mean secret. No press, no records, nothing. And they made one decision that basically destroyed the entire world economy. Like, I'm not being dramatic. This one meeting led to Hitler taking power, World War II, everything. You want to know what happened? Let's start in 1927. So it's summer, 1927. Long Island. 4 guys meet up. Central bankers. Benjamin Strong from the New York Fed. Montague Norman from the Bank of England. Hjalmar Schacht from Germany. Charles Rist from France. Now you're probably like, okay, why do I care? Here's why you care. Britain is completely broke after World War I. They're bleeding gold. Their economy is dying. So Montague Norman basically flies to America and is like, hey, can you guys lower your interest rates? It'll help us out. And Benjamin Strong, this is important, he says. Yeah, sure, no problem. August 1927, Fed drops rates from 4% to 3.5%. Now that sounds boring, right? But watch what happens. Cheap money starts flooding into the stock market. People start borrowing like crazy to buy stocks. You could put down $1,000, borrow $9,000, and buy $10,000 worth of stocks. If the stock goes up just 10%, you literally double your money. But if it goes down 10%, you're completely wiped out. This is basically the fuse being lit on a bomb. And nobody sees it coming. So check out these numbers, because they're insane. August 1927. Stock markets at 200 September. 1,929. Stock markets at 381. That's like a 90% gain in 2 years. Everyone's making money. Your barber's giving you stock tips. Your dentist is day trading between patients. It's absolute madness. But here's the thing, and this is what nobody talks about underneath all this. The actual economy is falling apart. Industrial production? Flat. Car sales? Going down. Housing construction? Collapsing. Unemployment? Starting to tick up. The economy is literally screaming, hey guys, recession is coming, but stock prices just keep going up and up and up. Why? Because everyone's buying with borrowed money. Now the Fed sees this happening. In 1928, they start making these little warnings about speculation and overheating, but do they actually do anything? Nope, they just watch, and watch, and watch. Until finally, August 1929, they realize, okay, this is getting out of hand, and they jack rates up to 6%. But dude, it's way too late. The bubble is absolutely massive at this point. It's about to pop. October 24th, 1929. Black Thursday. Market opens, normal, nothing weird. Then around 11 a.m., people just start, panicking. Like nobody really knows why it started. But once it starts, it's this insane cascade effect. So you know how people bought stocks with borrowed money? Well, when prices start dropping, your broker calls you and goes, hey, you need to put up more cash or we're selling your shares. But people don't have more cash? So the brokers just auto-sell everything, which makes prices drop more, which triggers more margin calls, which causes more selling. By noon, the market's down 11%. Then, and this is actually kind of crazy, JP Morgan, his son, and a bunch of his banker buddies pool their money together and start buying stocks to stop the panic. And it actually works. Market stabilizes everyone's. Like phew, crises averted. Next few days, it's shaky, but okay. President Hoover even comes out and says the fundamental business of the country is sound. Then, October 29th hits. Black Tuesday. Market opens, and it's just absolute chaos. 16.4 million shares trade that day, which is a record. Market drops 12% in a single day. But okay, here's what you need to understand. The stock crash itself. That's not actually the problem. Markets crash all the time. They recover. The real problem is what happens over the next 3 years. The banks start failing, and that's what turns this into the Great Depression. Alright, so this is where it gets really bad. November 1929, some small banks start failing. Makes sense? They'd lent money to stock speculators who can't pay them back now. Then December rolls around and people hear, oh crap, banks are failing, and they start thinking, wait, is my bank safe? So they go to withdraw their money. Now the problem with banks, and most people don't realize this. Banks don't actually keep all your deposits sitting in a vault. They lend most of it out. So when everyone shows up at the same time demanding their cash, banks literally don't have it. That's called a bank run. And bank runs spread like wildfire. Look at this. 1930, 1,352. Banks fail, 1931. 2,294. Banks fail, 1932. 1,456 banks fail. 1,933. Over 1,000 more fail by the end. 9,000 banks are gone. That's 40% of all American banks. And remember, there's no FDIC insurance yet. No government protection. If your bank fails, your savings just ... disappear. $140 billion in deposits. Gone. Poof. Now when banks fail, credit completely dries up. Businesses can't get loans. Farmers can't get financing. The whole economy just freezes. And here's the part that makes me mad. The Federal Reserve could have totally stopped this. That's literally their job. They're the lender of last resort. But they don't. They choose not to help. Why? Okay, so there's this guy, Andrew Mellon. He's Treasury Secretary. And this dude believes in something called liquidationism, which is basically this insane idea that crashes are good for the economy. His actual quote, and I'm not making this up, is, liquidate labor, liquidate stocks, liquidate farmers, liquidate real estate. Purge the rottenness out of the system. Like he literally thinks letting everything collapse will somehow make things better. So the Fed follows his advice. They don't just refuse to help banks. They actively make things worse. Between 1929 and 1933, they let the money supply drop by 30%. 30%, that's deflation. And deflation is absolutely deadly. Here's why it's so bad. When there's deflation, prices fall. Sounds good, right? Except wages fall even faster. But your debts? Those stay exactly the same. So imagine you owe $1,000 and suddenly your income gets cut in half. That debt effectively just doubled in weight. You can't pay it. You default, your business closes. Multiply that by millions of people. This is what turned a bad recession into the Great Depression, and it was completely preventable. The Fed caused this. Well, actively caused it. Whether through stupidity or something else, doesn't matter. They did this. Alright, so let me paint you a picture of what this actually looked like if you were just a regular person living through this. 1,929. Unemployment is 3.2%. Pretty normal. 1,933. Unemployment is 24.9%. 1 in 4 Americans can't find work. And remember, there's no unemployment insurance back then. No welfare. No food stamps. Nothing. If you don't work, you literally starve. So you've got bread lines in every major city. In New York, there are 85 bread lines serving 82,000 meals a day. People are waiting in line for hours just to get a bowl of watery soup. Then you've got these homeless camps called Hoovervilles, named after President Hoover, as like a mockery popping up everywhere. We're talking cardboard shacks, scrap metal lean-tos. In Central Park, hundreds of people are living in makeshift tents. Out in the farmland, wheat prices collapse from $1.05 per bushel down to 38 cents. Farmers literally can't cover their costs. So you know what they do? They burn their crops. Yeah, they burn them because it actually costs more to harvest and ship the wheat than they'd get from selling it. Meanwhile, in the cities, people are starving. The food exists, people just can't afford it. Families are sending their 10-year-old kids to work in coal mines and factories. 12-hour days. And out in the Great Plains, the whole region turns into this massive dust bowl. Giant black dust storms. Farms getting completely buried. 2.5 million people pack up and flee to California. This is America in 1933, and the government is somehow making it worse. President Hoover makes 3 decisions that are just catastrophically bad. First disaster, the Smoot-Hawley tariff. In 1930, Congress passes this massive tariff to protect American jobs. The idea is to make foreign goods more expensive so people buy American. But other countries aren't stupid. They retaliate with their own and international trade just collapses. American exports fall by 61%. Get this, to 1,028 economists sign a petition begging Hoover to veto this thing. They're like, this is going to destroy the economy. He signs it anyway. Second, disaster. In 1932, in the middle of this depression, Hoover raises taxes. The government's running a deficit, and Hoover's like, we need a balanced budget. So he raises the top tax rate from 25% to 63%. Almost triples it. This sucks even more money out of the economy right when people need it most. Third disaster. Hoover refuses to give direct relief to unemployed people. He says it'll make them dependent on government. Instead, he creates this thing called the Reconstruction Finance Corporation that lends money to banks and big corporations. Classic trickle-down economics. But spoiler alert, it doesn't trickle down. Banks just hoard the money. Businesses keep laying people off. And meanwhile, people are literally starving in the streets. By 1932, Hoover is the most hated man in America. November 1932. FDR wins in an absolute landslide, promising a new deal. So, March 4th, 1933, FDR gets an and the banking system is in complete meltdown. 38 states have already suspended all banking operations. People can't even access their own money. FDR's first move, he closes all the banks nationwide for 4 days. Calls it a bank holiday, which is a nice way of saying we re-shutting everything down. Then he goes on the radio. This is the first ever fireside chat, and basically talks to America like they re-sitting in his living room. He's like, look, we're going to inspect all the banks, separate the good ones from the bad ones. When they reopen, you can trust them. And it's psychological genius. When the banks reopen on March 13th, people actually start depositing money instead of withdrawing it. The panic just ... stops. But here's FDR's big controversial move. He takes America off the gold standard, makes it literally illegal for Americans to own gold. You have to turn it in to the government. They pay you $20.67 per ounce. Then FDR immediately revalues gold to $35 per ounce. Government makes $3 billion instantly. But more importantly, this means the Fed can now print money without being constrained by gold reserves. Money supply starts increasing again. Deflation stops. This is the actual turning point. But the recovery still takes years. So FDR launches the New Deal. It's this massive series of government programs. CCC puts 3 million young guys to work planting trees and building parks. WPA employs 8.5 million people building roads, bridges, schools, infrastructure we still use today. TVA brings electricity to the rural South for the first time. Social Security gets created, the retirement system we still have. FDIC gets created to ensure bank deposits so people stop freaking out about bank runs. Unemployment drops from 25% down to 14% by 1937. But okay, 14% is still really bad, right? And then something crazy happens. In 1937, FDR gets worried about government deficits and decides to cut spending. Economy immediately crashes again. Unemployment shoots back up to 19%. Turns out, you can't just turn off government spending in the middle of a depression. So the New Deal definitely helped. Infrastructure got built. Social Security saved millions of elderly people from poverty. But did it actually end the depression? Nope. You know what ended it? December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor. America enters World War II, and the economy just absolutely explodes. Government spending goes from $9 billion in 1940 to $93 billion in 1945. That's a 10x increase in 5 years. Where's all that money going? Building tanks, planes, ships, weapons, paying soldiers, manufacturing, everything for the war effort. Unemployment in 1940, 14.6%. Unemployment in 1943, 1.9%. Basically, everyone has a job. You're either fighting in the war or building stuff for it. Women flood into factories. You've seen the Rosie, the Riveter. Posters, 6 million women working in manufacturing. Consumer goods get rationed because all the factories are making war supplies instead. So people can't really buy much, which means everyone's just saving money. By 1945, Americans have saved up $140 billion. Then the war ends. Soldiers come home. And all the economists are like, oh no, we're going to have another crash. There aren't enough jobs for 12 million returning soldiers. But the complete opposite happens. Everyone takes all those savings and goes on a spending spree. Houses, cars, appliances, everything. GI Bill sends veterans to college. Suburbs get built. Bay boom starts. The 1950s economic boom kicks off. So here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody likes to talk about. The Great Depression ended because of the single biggest government spending program in human history. World War II. Not the free market. Self-correcting. Not austerity. Not letting bad businesses fail. Government spending on a massive scale. Okay, so here's the question everyone always asks. Did anyone actually make money during the Depression? Oh yeah, absolutely. Joseph Kennedy, JFK's dad, he sells all his stocks in 1929, right before the crash. Then buys up real estate and businesses when everything's cheap in the early 30s. By 1935, he's one of the richest men in America. The Rockefellers do the same thing. Sell before the crash. Then buy Manhattan real estate for pennies on the dollar. They literally build Rockefeller Center during the Depression. J.P. Morgan Jr. His bank survives and he buys up all the failing banks, consolidating power. Andrew Mellon, yeah, the liquidate everything guy. He's buying art collections and companies at fire sale prices. You see the pattern? If you had cash during the Depression, you could buy assets for like 10 cents on the dollar. And the timing on all of this is just suspiciously perfect. Like how did they all know to sell right before the crash? I'm not saying there was definitely a conspiracy, but the timing is really, really interesting. Makes you think, you know? So this didn't just destroy America, it destroyed the entire world. Germany gets hit the worst, 30% unemployment. The Weimar Republic completely collapses. And in 1933, Hitler takes power, promising to fix everything. The Great Depression literally put Hitler in power, which led directly to World War II. Britain's unemployment hits 20%. The pound collapses. This is basically the beginning of the end for the British Empire. France has political chaos. Government keeps changing. They're so weakened, they can't resist when Germany starts getting aggressive in the late 30s. Year S. What S? While though the Soviet Union is the only major economy that doesn't have a depression. Why? Because they're not integrated into the global capitalist system. Stalin's 5-year plans are brutal and millions die. But the Soviet economy actually grows during the 1930s, which makes communism look really attractive to people around the world. Like, wow, capitalism completely collapsed, but the Soviet system is working. This shapes global politics for the next 60 years. Latin America sees commodity prices collapse. Countries can't pay their debts. Military coups everywhere. The Depression didn't just destroy economies. It destroyed democracies all over the world. Alright, so what are the actual lessons here? Because I think school teaches this all wrong. Lesson 1. Central banks can absolutely cause depressions. The Fed made TWO, huge mistakes. The 1927 rate cut that created the bubble, then the tight money that turned a crash into a depression. Lesson 2. Deflation is way worse than inflation. When prices are falling, the entire economy just freezes. Nobody buys anything because they're waiting for lower prices. Nobody invests. Debt becomes impossible to pay. That's why the Fed today targets 2% inflation. They're trying to stay far away from any risk of deflation. Lesson 3. Bank runs spread like a virus. One bank fails, and panic spreads to healthy banks. That's why we created FDIC insurance. It stops the panic. Lesson 4. Tariffs hurt everyone. The Smoot-Hawley tariff was an absolute disaster. When countries start retaliating with their own tariffs, global trade collapses and everybody loses. Lesson 5. In a major crisis, government has to spend money. The private sector can't because nobody has money or credit. So government has to step in. The New Deal helped. World War II ended it. Both involved massive government spending. I know that's not popular with free market people, but the data is pretty clear on this. So here's why all of this matters. Right now, in 2024, look at these conditions. Easy money creating bubbles. Check. 2022-2021 was basically free money. Record stock market valuations? Check. We're at all-time highs? Massive wealth inequality? Check. Actually worse now than it was in 1929. Political instability? Check. Just look around. Central banks making questionable decisions? Check. The same ingredients that created the Great Depression are all here. Again, now I'm not saying we're definitely going to have another Great Depression. We have safety nets now, FDIC insurance, unemployment benefits, Social Security. We built all those specifically because of what happened in the 30s. But here's what worries me. The Great Depression was completely avoidable. At every single step, the people in charge made the wrong decision. So, the question is, have we actually learned from history, or are we setting ourselves up to repeat it? Because history doesn't repeat exactly, but it rhymes. And right now, it's rhyming pretty loudly. So let me leave you with this thought experiment. Imagine you're living in 1928, and somehow you know everything that's going to happen in 1929. What would you do differently? Now flip that around. It's 2024. You just learned all this history. What are you going to do? Because the patterns are all there. Secret central bank meetings still happen. Easy money still creates bubbles. Wealth inequality is at record levels. All the ingredients are there, so you can either prepare for what might be coming, or you can hope it'll be different this time. Your call. Anyway, thanks for sticking with me through this whole thing. I know it was long, but honestly, this story is so much crazier than what they teach in school. If this changed how you see the economy, share it with someone. More people need to understand this stuff. Alright, I'll catch you in the next one. Stay curious.